Section 3 is divided into 3 parts. The first part, which we will be discussing today, is titled The Distinction Between Pure and Political Knowledge. Second section is the methodological question. And third and the last section, which happens to be the shortest section, is the personal dimension. Today, we will focus on the distinction between pure and political knowledge. Now, there are 4 or 5 very important things which can be discussed under sides, distinction between what he describes as pure and political knowledge. Okay? So at the outset, we can say that Said dismisses or rejects the distinction between pure and political knowledge, the demarcation between pure and political knowledge. Rather, we can say that he questions the idea of pure knowledge. And I will read from the first section 3, part 1, the distinction between pure and political knowledge. Now, it is believed that कुछ जड़ी knowledge है, particularly humanities ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ knowledge है, वो pure knowledge है. ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੀ knowledge ਅਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕੁਝ political establishment ਦੇ द्वारा करवाई जाती है, ਜਿਹੜੀ research political establishment ਦੇ द्वारा कराई जाती है, वो political knowledge है. He disagrees with this. वो ਇਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ disagree करता है. चलो, it is very easy to argue that knowledge about Shakespeare or Wordsworth is not political, whereas knowledge about contemporary China or the Soviet Union is. फिर वो कहता है, my own formal and professional designation is that of a humanist. He says, I am myself a humanist, and everyone assumes that I, as a humanist, pursue pure knowledge. I do not pursue political knowledge. There is a demarcation between pure knowledge and political knowledge. And he says that it is believed that I, as a humanist, pursue pure knowledge. He questions this. Said questions this. He disagrees with this demarcation. ਉਹਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਿਕ ਇਹ demarcation ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ pure knowledge ਤੇ political knowledge ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਠੀਕ demarcation ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ. Let us read a little further. One reason for saying that a humanist who writes about Wordsworth or an editor whose speciality is Keats is not involved in anything political is that what he does seems to have no direct political effect upon reality in the everyday sense. ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਆਦਮੀ, ਕੋਈ scholar who studies Keats or who studies Wordsworth will have no direct impact on the political reality of the world. ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ this is linked with a certain understanding of culture as an apolitical category, क्योंकि literature is covered under the domain of culture. ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਲਚਰ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੈਟੇਗਰੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਏਪੋਲਿਟੀਕਲ ਕੈਟੇਗਰੀ ਹੈ, ਬਟ Said, following Foucault and particularly Gramsci, expresses his disagreement with this idea. And I talked about this yesterday also, that according to Gramsci, cultural institutions are hegemonic in nature. They are conformity producing. They produce subjects who live according to the established conventions of a society. Culture ऐदा दे इंसान पैदा करदा है जिहड़े समाज दियां रिवायतां दे मुताबिक अपना जीवन जिउंदे ने। तां इस लिहाज तो कल्चर नूं एक एपोलिटिकल कैटेगरी कहना, एक गैर राजनीतिक कैटेगरी कहना गलत है। तां इस तरह करके Said, introduces this idea of his, okay, that कोई आदमी जिहड़ा कीट्स नूं पढ़दा है, वर्ड्सवर्थ नूं पढ़दा है, शेक्सपीयर नूं पढ़दा है, उहनूं ये मन्निया जांदा है कि he operates in the domain of pure knowledge. According to him, this is a wrong notion. इस सेक्शन दे विच इसे आइडिया नूं along 2-3 lines develop किया जाता है. Let us go further. हाँ, दूसरी गल, on the other hand, such areas like economics or political research, sociology, etc., are considered to be instances of political knowledge. Okay. Now, yes, अगली जड़ी हुन why so? Why should we believe that the demarcation between pure knowledge and political knowledge is a wrong demarcation? Because let me read this very important statement from section 3. No one has ever devised a method for detaching the scholar from the circumstances of life, from the fact of his involvement, conscious or unconscious, with a class set of beliefs, social position, or from the mere activity of being a member of a society. These continue to bear on what he does professionally. Now here, the question of individual and individual and society. Individual is we can say it is brought into the discussion, the question of individual and society. जो भी कुछ एक ऑथर प्रोड्यूस करता है वो एज एन इंडिविजुअल प्रोड्यूस करता है, वो ठीक है, बट एट द सेम टाइम दैट इंडिविजुअल इज ऑल्सो अ मेंबर ऑफ अ सोसाइटी. इसलिए ये गल कहता है कि no one has ever devised a method for detaching the scholar from the circumstances of life, from the larger. किसे इंडिविजुअल नू आपां एक आइसोलेशन च नहीं देख सकते. No individual is an isolated unit, an island, or a person who leads a hermetic life in a kind of a ideological vacuum. ये गलत है. हर आदमी अपने समाज दियां सोशियो पोलिटिकल सच्चाइयां नाल कॉन्शियस या अनकॉन्शियस लेवल ते वाकिफ होता है. ते वो जड़ियां सच्चाइयां they are always in the background when he is writing. So this is the first reason for which he questions the idea of pure knowledge. Pure knowledge या transcendental knowledge या ऐसी knowledge ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਇੱਕ idealistic nature ਦੀ knowledge ਹੈ ਨਾ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਮਾਜਿਕ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਸਰੋਕਾਰ ਪ੍ਰਵੇਸ਼ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਤਾਂ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਐਸੀ knowledge ਦੀ ਸੰਭਾਵਨਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਲਚਰਲ ਆਰਟੀਫੈਕਟਸ हैं ਕਲਚਰਲ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਸ਼ਨਸ हैं वर्ड्सवर्थ ਦੀ ਸ਼ੇਕਸਪੀਅਰ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੰਟਰਪ੍ਰੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਵਿਆਖਿਆ ਹੈ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਲਾਈਫ ਤੋਂ ਅਲੱਗ ਕਰਕੇ ਜਾਂ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਤੋਂ ਅਲੱਗ ਕਰਕੇ नहीं देख सकते। What I am interested in doing now is suggesting how the journal Liberal Consensus that true knowledge is fundamentally non-political obscures the obscurely organized political circumstances obtaining when the knowledge is produced. So, this is ugly jedi gal hai. Number one, we cannot, as he said, detach a scholar from the circumstances of life. तो ਇਹਦਾ मतलब है कि हर एक राइटर अपने समाज का रिप्रेजेंटेटिव भी होता है, इंडिविजुअल भी होता है ते रिप्रेजेंटेटिव भी होता है। तो दूसरी गल जी अगली गल कहने की कोशिश कर रहा है कि जो एपिथेट है ना पोलिटिकल, द एपिथेट पोलिटिकल हैज there has been a tendency to use this epithet in a very derogatory sense, as if ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਜੀ ਇਹ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਉਸ ਨੌਲੇਜ ਦੀ ਕੁਆਲਿਟੀ ਡਿਕਰੀਜ਼ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ। ਇਸ ਟੈਂਡੈਂਸੀ ਨਾਲ ਦੂਸਰਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਟੈਂਡੈਂਸੀ ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਸਹਿਮਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਿ to associate negative associations with the epithet political. तो अगली गल वो कहता है कि हुन क्योंकि सब्जेक्ट ओरिएंटलिज्म है ना जी असी 3-4 we have already built the context by identifying 3 or 4 very important assumptions which are at the back of Said's work. Okay. One was जिहड़ी असी कल देखी सी कि the knowledge is or knowledge जिहड़ी मैं थानू let me repeat what I said, that knowledge emerges first, yes, let me systematically remind you about the various facts which I assumptions which I pointed out, listed yesterday. One was that representation and reality may not correspond with one another, and second was representations emerge from binaries. Now here the binary consists of the east and the west. Okay. So these were the two ideas which I emphasized yesterday, that according to Said's point of view, representation and reality may not correspond with one another. ये गल इस गल नाल जुड़ी हुई है जिहड़ी असीं हुणी कह रहे सी, क्योंकि हर तुसी knowledge नू representation नू एक ट्रांसेंडेंटल कैटेगरी नहीं मान सकते, एक आइडियल ते परफेक्ट कैटेगरी नहीं मान सकते, ऑब्जेक्टिव कैटेगरी नहीं मान सकते, क्योंकि रिप्रेजेंटेशन एक पोजीशन तो होती है, ऑथर दी पोजीशन, ਅੱਜ ਉਹ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਤੇ ਹੀ ਸੇਜ਼ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆਥਰ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਸਮਾਜ ਦਾ ਪਾਰਟ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਸਮਾਜ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਸੋਸ਼ੀਓ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਰਿਐਲਿਟੀਜ਼ ਹਨ ਉਹ ਉਹਦੀ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਡੈਫੀਨੇਟਲੀ ਦੇ ਲੀਵ an impact on his writings ਤੇ ਦੂਸਰੀ ਗੱਲ ਉਹਨੇ ਕਹੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ representations also emerge from binary oppositions ਤਾਂ ਇਸ ਹੁਣ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਈਸਟ ਤੇ ਵੈਸਟ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ binary opposition is composed of the difference of race the difference of race the colored people of the east and the white races of the west ਤੇ ਕੱਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵਾਈਟ ਰੇਸ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਯੂਰਪ ਹੈ it was materially ascendant during the post enlightenment period it experienced material ascendancy and therefore it was in the material sense very powerful and the east was less powerful. Therefore, as far as this binary of the east and the west is concerned, the white races and the colored races is concerned, the white races were in a position to assert their superiority. This is what Orientalism is all about. The next point. The next point is कि socio-political realities ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਹਰ ਰਾਈਟਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਚੇਤਨਾ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਮਾਈਂਡ ਦੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਰੱਖ ਕੇ ਉਹ ਲਿਖਦਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਫਿਰ ਉਹ ਅਗਲਾ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਆਧਾਰ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਯੂਰਪ ਦਾ ਹਰ ਰਾਈਟਰ ਆਪਣੀ ਸੁਪੀਰੀਓਰਿਟੀ ਮਟੀਰੀਅਲ ਸੁਪੀਰੀਓਰਿਟੀ ਰੇਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਸੁਪੀਰੀਓਰਿਟੀ ਤੇ ਦ ਫੈਕਟ ਆਫ ਕੋਲੋਨਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨ ਬਾਰੇ ਅਵੇਅਰ ਸੀ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਅਵੇਅਰਨੈਸ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਲਿਖਦਾ ਸੀ I doubt that it is controversial, for example, to say that an Englishman in India or Egypt in the late 19th century took an interest in those countries that was never far from their status in his mind as British colonies. He said, when an Englishman wrote about India or Egypt in the late 19th century, the writer knew that India and Egypt are British colonies. The age fact see, this had a very deep impact on their writings. It had a bearing on their writings. It overshadowed their writings. And it kind of constituted the core of their writings. ये गल हर एक जगह ते reflect हुंदी सी कि writer is conscious कि India and Egypt are the colonies of British. So we can say that the writers, just if we put it grossly, we can say the writers wrote with a consciousness of their racial superiority. And then, therefore, Orientalism is not a mere political subject matter or field that is, yes, then we come to the next point. But before I come to this point, there are pointed references to very important European writers like Locke, like Hume, Balzac, John Stuart Mill, and Karl Marx. Let me read a little bit, then I'll come to the next point. Similarly, as Harry Bracken has been tirelessly showing, philosophers will conduct their discussions of Locke, Hume, and empiricism without ever taking into account that there is an explicit connection in these classic writers between their philosophic doctrines and racial theory, justifications of slavery, or arguments for colonial exploitation. These celebrated writers in their writings tacitly, imperceptibly gave justification of racial theory, justification of slavery, and justification of colonial exploitation. Again, this is a very important reference here. Let me read it for you. In the first place, nearly every 19th century writer was extraordinarily well aware of the fact of the empire. This is a subject not very well studied, but it will not take a modern Victorian specialist long to admit that liberal cultural heroes like John Stuart Mill, Arnold, Carlyle, Newman, Macaulay, Ruskin, George Eliot, Dickens had definite views on race and imperialism, which are quite easily to be found at work in their writing. So even a specialist must deal with the knowledge that Mill, for example, made it clear in On Liberty and Representative Government that his views there could not be applied to India because Indians were civilizationally, if not racially inferior. The same kind of paradox is to be found in Marx, as I try to show in this book. Okay, so when very highly evolved and advanced theories of social evolution and progress were being propagated in Europe by these writers named here, such as John Stuart Mill, Macaulay, or uh, or even Marx. These writers were evasive in their approach to India. Okay? They unabashedly and very categorically stated that their theories do not apply on India because India is civilizationally backward. So, if we once again put this fact grossly, we can say that these writers were racists. Their ideas were informed by racism. So we cannot separate the writings, detach the writings from the background of those ideas, those cultural ideas about the superiority of the West over the East. ਇਹ ਸਾਰੇ writings ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ reiterate ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, reverberate ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਨਜ਼ਰ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ.